Tonight, on the Confession Stories, we meet a woman who believed that honesty would protect her. But in a world where perception rules the truth, one photograph changed everything. She was the kind of person who never broke the rules. The quiet one at work, the one who always arrived early, stayed late, and never raised her voice. Until one picture, a moment stolen, taken out of context, turned her from trusted colleague into office scandal. Would you fight to clear your name if no one was willing to listen? Or would you walk away to keep what little dignity you have left? This is the photo that ruined my name.
I used to think life was safest when it was quiet. I liked quiet things, mornings that smelled of coffee and spreadsheets, numbers that made sense when people didn't. I worked in a small accounting firm on the edge of Brighton. 20 people, one boss, too many opinions. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, safe, or so I thought. Then Lana arrived. She was everything I wasn't. Loud, confident, magnetic. Her laughter carried across the office like perfume, sweet but impossible to escape. She had this way of making everyone feel chosen, even when she was only pretending to listen. At first, I admired her. She made the office lighter. But soon, I saw the cracks. Numbers rounded up to save time, receipts disappearing, little shortcuts she called harmless. One Thursday, I found a duplicate payment. £2,000, same supplier, same date. It wasn't mine. It was hers. I didn't accuse her. I just reported it. It was my job, after all. That night, she stopped saying good morning. The next day, she called me Miss Perfect in front of everyone. People laughed. I didn't. And that's when the air in the office changed. A silence that hummed, like the pause before thunder. I thought honesty would protect me. I didn't realize it had just painted a target on my back. It happened 3 weeks later. A Monday that smelled of rain and toner. The kind of morning where even the air feels reluctant. I was early, as usual. Lana wasn't in yet. I remember thinking maybe things were settling down. The office chatter, the stares, the jokes that ended when I walked in. Maybe people had simply moved on. But when Mr. Harris appeared by my desk, his face was strange. Polite, too polite. Could we talk in my office? He didn't sit down. He didn't offer tea. He just turned his monitor toward me. And there it was, a photo. Me, sitting at a cafe. A man across from me, a client. We were laughing about something, maybe the weather, maybe nothing at all. And underneath it, in bold text, was a caption that made my stomach drop. She's been meeting clients privately. Heard she takes her own commission. I stared at it so long the colours began to fade. That's not what it looks like, I said quietly. He asked to meet because his office was under renovation. It was about invoices, not money. Mr. Harris sighed. He wasn't angry. He looked disappointed. I want to believe you, he said, but this doesn't look good. You understand how it appears. That word, appears, it's small, but it can ruin you. I wanted to defend myself, but when I looked around, I realized Lana was standing just outside the glass wall of his office, pretending to search for papers. Her reflection met mine. She smiled, slow, satisfied. By the time I left that room, my hands were shaking. I could feel eyes following me back to my desk, people whispering into mugs of tea. Someone's phone screen lit up. I caught a glimpse of that photo again. By lunch, I wasn't a colleague anymore. I was a story. That afternoon, no one spoke to me. When I typed, keys sounded louder than usual. When I breathed, I felt like I was stealing air that didn't belong to me. I stayed until everyone else had gone, just to avoid the silence that waited at home. It's strange how fast a life can tilt. One photo, one sentence, and suddenly the truth no longer fits. I told myself it would fade. Rumors die when they run out of breath, but this one learned how to breathe on its own. By Wednesday, people weren't whispering. They were performing. Smiles that lasted too long. Questions that sounded too polite. Someone had printed the photo. I saw it once, half folded under a stack of reports, like a secret no one wanted to own. When I passed Lana in the corridor, she tilted her head. "Rough week?" she asked softly, her voice sweet as syrup, but her eyes cold. By Friday, the story had changed shape again. Now I wasn't just meeting clients, I was selling contracts for personal gain. Every hour added another lie. Every silence gave it oxygen. That evening, my phone rang. Unknown number, but the voice was familiar. My mother-in-law. "Sweetheart," she said, "is everything all right at work?" Her tone was gentle, frightened. I tried to laugh. "Of course, why?" "Well," she hesitated, "someone from our church mentioned you're under investigation." Under investigation. 2 words that tasted like rust. I told her it was nonsense, but she kept talking. About reputation, about the family name, about how people talk. And suddenly I realized the rumor had traveled faster than I ever could. From office to friend, friend to neighbor, neighbor to family. It had circled the world I lived in, and now it sat at my kitchen table. When my husband came home, he didn't ask how my day was. He just said, "Mum's worried." I nodded, pretending not to hear the second meaning. So am I. That night, I heard them talking in the hall. Her whisper cut through the door. If only she wasn't so tempted by money. Tempted. That word sank into my chest and stayed there. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house breathe around me. Every creak a reminder that I was no longer trusted here. The next morning, I couldn't eat. I poured tea and watched it cool untouched. When I looked at my reflection in the cup, I barely recognized myself. Rumors don't just destroy what people think of you, they destroy what you think of you. And once they start, no truth in the world feels loud enough to stop them. That weekend, I didn't sleep. The walls of our flat felt smaller with every breath. I sat on the floor surrounded by paperwork, invoices, receipts, emails, anything that could prove I wasn't the thief they'd made me. The printer hummed through the night. By dawn, the carpet was buried under paper. I had built myself a fortress of evidence, and inside it, I was still shaking. When Monday came, I didn't dress carefully. No makeup, no perfume, just a plain blouse and the thick folder in my arms. I walked into the office before anyone else arrived. Mr. Harris looked surprised when I knocked. "Please," I said, "just look." He hesitated, then nodded. I spread the documents across his desk, dates, signatures, timestamps, every message with that client. For 2 hours, he said nothing. Just the rustle of paper and the steady tick of the clock. My heart kept pace with it, every second a plea. When he finally looked up, his expression had changed. "You're right," he said quietly. "She set you up." He showed me what he'd found. The photo's metadata, altered. The email chain, edited to imply cash dealings. All of it traced back to Lana's account. It wasn't careless malice. It was deliberate. Relief came first, then fury. My hands trembled, but my voice didn't. I want her to face what she's done. He nodded, still pale. I'll handle it internally. Internally. That word felt too small for what she'd done to me. When I walked out of his office, the hallway seemed quieter than ever. No one knew yet. Outside, rain pressed against the windows, and for the first time in weeks, I stood still long enough to breathe. But peace didn't come. Because clearing your name doesn't clear the damage. The whispers keep echoing in rooms you can't reach. By noon, the news began to leak. She lied, someone whispered near the copier. Another voice answered, Are you sure? Even truth sounds like gossip when people don't want to believe it. That afternoon, I sat at my desk and stared at the folder. Proof of my innocence, proof of her cruelty. And yet all I felt was empty. Vindication is quieter than people think. It doesn't shout. It just sighs and waits for you to start breathing again. When the truth came out, I thought I would feel relief. I expected to walk into work lighter, to hear the weight fall from my name. But the truth doesn't erase suspicion. It only quiets it enough for people to pretend it's gone. By Wednesday, everyone knew. Mr. Harris had held a meeting. He didn't use names, just said, a misunderstanding has been resolved. The room nodded, and 10 minutes later they were discussing coffee orders. No one said they were sorry. No one looked me in the eye. That's how redemption works in offices like ours. Silent, invisible, disposable. Lana stopped coming in. Her desk sat empty for a week, then her name disappeared from the rota. Rumor said, personal leave. No one asked questions. We'd all had enough of questions. When I went home that evening, my husband was waiting at the door. He hugged me, a brief, uncertain gesture, like someone testing if glass will break. I'm sorry, he said. I should have trusted you. I smiled, but something in me stayed still. You can forgive a doubt, but you can't forget being doubted. At dinner, his mother tried to act normal. She asked if I wanted more potatoes. Her hands shook slightly when she poured wine. Halfway through the meal, she said, Your boss called. Explained everything. Then softer, I knew you wouldn't do something like that. She meant it kindly, but the past tense in her voice stung. Knew, not know. As if belief was a gift she'd once given and now returned. Later that night, I sat in the living room long after they'd gone to bed. The house was too quiet. The hum of the fridge, the ticking clock, tiny sounds that felt louder than forgiveness. I looked at my reflection in the dark window. I was free, yes, but freedom after doubt feels like exile. No one's chasing you anymore, but you also have nowhere to go. They say the truth will set you free. What they never mention is that freedom can be unbearably lonely. The weeks that followed felt strangely quiet, not peaceful, just empty. Silence had moved into the office and made itself comfortable. No one talked about what happened. It was as if the story had been erased, like a typo corrected in the company history. But every silence carried its own kind of noise. You could feel it in the air, the way people smiled too much, spoke too carefully, as if truth itself might be contagious. I worked, as I always had, checked figures, balanced ledgers, answered emails. People started copying me into group chats again, little olive branches made of text, and I accepted them because I was tired of being an island. One afternoon, I caught two colleagues whispering near the copier. They stopped when I looked up. One of them smiled too brightly. "It's good to have you back," she said. I wanted to ask, back from where? But I just nodded. Sometimes survival means pretending you don't hear the things that still echo. Mr. Harris treated me kindly after that. He said I'd handled everything with dignity. He even mentioned a promotion sometime next quarter. But I knew what he really meant was, let's all forget this happened. So I smiled and agreed, because that's what forgiveness looks like in offices. Not justice, just amnesia. At home, things were calmer. My husband was gentler now. He cooked dinner on Fridays, brought me tea without being asked. But there was a new politeness in his touch, as if he was holding a version of me he no longer fully recognized. We were fine, but fine has so many cracks if you listen closely enough. Sometimes, late at night, I'd wake to the sound of rain and think it was whispers. It took me a while to realize the difference. Whispers accuse, rain forgives. I began taking walks along the pier again. The sea was rough that winter, grey and endless. But it made sense to me. You can't control the tide. You can only learn to stand when it pulls. And that's what I was doing now, standing. Not healed, not whole, just still here. Spring came late that year. Cold winds still swept the pier, but the light had softened, as if the world was trying to apologize for how harsh it had been. At work, things had settled into something like normal. People joked again. The kettle hummed. The days blurred into numbers and deadlines. Sometimes I almost forgot it had happened. Almost. One morning, a new face appeared in the office. Her name was Emily. Fresh out of university. Eager, nervous, hopeful. She reminded me of myself years ago, before I learned that honesty doesn't always protect you. During her first week, she made a small mistake on an invoice. Nothing serious. But by Friday, whispers had already started. I recognized the tone. That same slow poison I'd once tasted. I watched her sit alone at lunch, her smile fixed, her shoulders tense. I could have ignored it. I almost did, because standing up means remembering, and remembering still hurt. But that evening, I walked into Mr. Harris's office. It wasn't her, I said simply. He frowned, confused. I showed him the file, the numbers, the timeline. It took 10 minutes to clear her name. 10 minutes. That's all it takes to stop a lie when you catch it early. The next morning, Emily came to my desk. Her eyes were red. "Thank you," she whispered. I just smiled. Because what could I say? That saving her was the only way I knew how to save myself. Later that day, I found myself standing by the window, watching rain drift across the glass. And for the first time since everything happened, the sound didn't make me flinch. It just sounded honest. They say time heals. It doesn't. Time teaches you where to place the scar. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you meet someone who reminds you why you kept fighting. I wasn't who I used to be, but maybe that was the point. Maybe survival isn't about staying the same. Maybe it's about learning to begin again, quietly, gently, with no apology for still believing in good. For the first time in months, I packed my bag, turned off my computer, and walked home without looking over my shoulder.
And that was her story, a story about a woman who lost everything, not because she was guilty, but because someone decided a lie was easier to believe than the truth. It started with one photograph, a moment caught in the wrong light, but it became something far larger, a mirror held up to every workplace, every friendship, every family that's ever chosen gossip over grace. Maybe you've been her, the one accused, watching people step back as if honesty were contagious, Or maybe you've been the whisperer, repeating a story you didn't mean to harm. Either way, we all play a part in the way rumors move. What she learned, painfully, slowly, was that truth doesn't always restore what lies destroy. It only shows you who stays when the noise fades. Months after the photo, her life looked ordinary again. Spreadsheets, rain, quiet dinners. But ordinary will never mean the same thing. She carries her scar like a small light now. A reminder that surviving isn't about being believed. It's about believing yourself, even when no one else does. When I first heard her story, I thought about how easily reputation breaks, how trust can shatter with the click of send, and how sometimes forgiveness is the hardest form of freedom. So tonight, we leave you with a question, one only you can answer. If someone ruined your name and later asked for forgiveness, would you give it to them? Or would you keep the scar as proof of who you became? Tell us what you think. Would you forgive the one who destroyed your reputation? Or would you let silence be your reply? Share your thoughts below. We read every confession. You've been listening to The Confession Stories. Every story hides a confession, and sometimes that confession belongs to you. Good night.